Good morning, everybody. I am going to attempt making some sourdough bread, and I'm going to be using wheat berries, and I have white wheat, and I also have some red wheat berries. So I haven't decided on what recipe I'm going to do, and this is my first time, so we're going to be experimenting. So I finally bought a grain mill. So that's what I'm going to be using to grind the wheat berries. Now, I've had this thing for a while, and I never took it out of the box. And then finally when I did, I milled just a little bit of grain, and I made a pizza, which turned out okay. And then I also made some pancake mix. And I should have shown you how I put the pancake mix together, because that's what I'm making for breakfast today. But I did not pick up my camera yesterday. So my intention, I should mention that the grain mill doesn't come with this little thing that I put in the place where the flour comes through. But I noticed that after you grind your flour, even after you clean up using the little, where is it? I'll show it to you once I find it. You still end up with flour on the table. And then it occurred to me, I have this thing from one of those pour over coffees that people make. And when that glass pour over container broke, I never replaced it, but I kept that. And so the day I used the grain mill for the first time and noticed how messy it can get, it occurred to me, I can just use this thing. That's what it looks like. And it's just the coffee pour over cover. And what I normally do once not normally, because this is like the second time I'm going to be using this mill. But after using the mill and cleaning it up as best as I can, I just shove this in there. And it fits perfectly. So now when I move the mill or touch it, you see just a few seconds and we already have flour on the countertop. So anyway, that helps with that. But before I start doing any of this experimenting, I need to clean up my kitchen. My kitchen is a mess this morning. I did not bother to clean it up before going to bed. So, and I wish I didn't have to show this mess, but that's life. So that's what my countertops look like. So I'm going to spend about 5 or 10 minutes and just get everything all cleaned up and sanitized. And then we're going to go from there. And there is my sourdough starter. That's what I'm going to be using, along with the wheat berries that I just showed you. So we'll be back in a second. It'll be a second for you after I'm done cleaning. All right, so I thought I would show you what the pancake mix looks like, even if I didn't show you getting it already. Let's see if you can see that, and I'll tell you what the ingredients are. So that's what it looks like. And so what I normally do is I take 1 cup of steel cut oats, half a cup of flour, 2 eggs, some water, and some oil. And that's what I end up with. So it's basically an oats. Oh, I left out one of the most important ingredients, didn't I? Did I? I sure did. So I put in half a cup of pecans, 1 cup of steel cut oats, and half a cup of flour. And the reason why I put in the flour is just to bind the pecans and the oats. And like I said, I put in a little bit of oil, a pinch of salt, 2 eggs, and some water. And I just used to make regular pancakes, but once I started doing this is all Roger will eat now. So that's what I'm doing before we start cleaning and making our bread. So I'll be back shortly. I'll show you what the pancakes look like after they're cooked. All right, so as usual, I am using Steramine to sanitize the countertops, and I just follow the instructions. So they're little tablets, and I know I probably have shown this before, or they're not so little. So that's what the tablets look like. And I just dilute them into a big bottle according to the instructions. And then from that big bottle, I normally put just enough in this Myers bottle, and I just spray a little bit on the counters, and I let it sit for about 2 minutes, and then I wipe off the counters. Yeah, that's Dee in the background. All right, lots of interruptions today. So those are the cloths I've been using for cleaning. I don't know if you can really see that. Okay, so that's the top. So I use this instead of using the paper towels. And I heard about them from Becky at Acre Homestead, and her mom was raving about them. So the next time I saw them at the Costco here, I decided to try a pack. And it says you can use each cloth for about approximately 100 times. And in between you can wash it. You can put it in your washing machine. I haven't tried that, but I wash them thoroughly each evening when I'm done for the day. You can also find them at Amazon, but you get the best value for your money if you get them from Costco. You get about 12 of them, and I believe it was either like $12, because they were also on sale when I got them. So if they're still at Costco, I will put a link below. Otherwise, I'll just put an Amazon link. And I have found that with the Steramine, your best value is from Walmart. And I know most people don't want to be shopping at Walmart now, but that's where you get the best value. Even if you buy them online, because you get free shipping if you buy at least $35 worth of goods. But you can also get it at Amazon. I believe it's like $2 or $3 more if you buy through Amazon. So I'll have links for both options, and then I'll let you do your own research and make the decision about where you want to get them. All right, back to cleaning, and pancakes in the background. I'm still cooking. All right, so that's what the pancakes look like. And that should be enough for Roger. I don't usually have breakfast. And when I do, I'm mostly eating a carnivore diet. But I do taste the food as I make it, just to make sure that it tastes right. I know that recipe is good because I've done it for a while now. And maybe in another video, we'll talk about the carnivore diet and why I'm doing that. But in the meantime, I'm going to go back to finishing the cleaning. We still have quite a ways to go. There we go. All right, so I'll be back shortly. All right, so it's a couple of hours later, and I got a little bit distracted, but we're back in the kitchen again. And I have my countertops mostly clean. Dishes are done. And the countertops are clear for me to work. Mostly cleaned up the stove. I still need to clean the top, but I'm going to wait until after I'm done cooking for the day to really do a thorough clean of that. But that's where we are. And the space I'll be walking in is relatively clean and open. I'm also defrosting my dinner on the side there. The sourdough has risen some more. It was down on that yellow line, and now it's about 2 centimeters above that. So that's good. We can tell it's really active. Oh, this is the little brush that I was talking about that came with the Nutrimil. So that's what I use to clean the flour when I'm done, and then I put that little cap on there. So let's get the flour ready, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we have our recipe ready, and this is my first time doing this, so we'll see how this turns out. So for this sandwich loaf, and again, it is the sourdough freshly milled white wheat loaf, and we are going to start off by doing our measurements. Hopefully you can see that. And we need 560 grams of the white wheat berries, all flour. So I'm going to go ahead and do that measurement. I'm not sure I have enough here. I may need to go get some more. And we need 560. I hope you can see that. Yeah. Okay, that's 57. It's 561. All right, exactly 560. And I'm going to get this grinding. All right, so we are ready to start grinding the flour, and I'm going to try and do this one-handed. So I'm going to take that out, and then we need to turn on the grinder before we put in the berries. So it's going to get a little loud. And I'm doing it on a really fine setting. All right, so our flour is ready. So now I just need to clean this. Whoa, making a mess. And put my handy little cover on. And let me see if I can get the camera back in place. All right, so next we need 360 grams of water. And this is warm water. Let me get some water. It's 200. And that's 325. It's 361. I'm happy with that. And then we need 3 tablespoons of butter. This is room temperature butter. Let's see, okay. 1, 2, and 3. I'm just going to put the butter in my warm water and let it melt. And once this is melted, we're going to add in 1 egg, get all our wet ingredients in there. And your water should be around 105 degrees. You don't want it too hot because you don't want to kill your sourdough. Alright, so I'm going to put this in the microwave for a few seconds. And you don't need to get the butter completely melted. You just want to make sure that you don't have any hard pieces in there. So I'll be right back. Alright, so that's good enough. And the water is just barely warm, so I can add in my egg. And that's a room temperature egg. Get it mixed in there. Now that we have all our wet ingredients mixed together, we can get it in our bowl. And now we can add the salt and the sugar. Alright, so we need 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And I am using the Himalayan pink salt. You can use whatever salt you have. And then we are using 3 tablespoons of sugar. And I'm using cane sugar. Let's get that mixed in. I'm going to try and get as much of that sugar dissolved in. That's kind of loud. Let's get a spatula here. Get as much of that sugar and salt mixed in. That looks good. And next, we're going to get our flour mixed in. And if you have a mixer, you can use a mixer. A mixer. I'm going to be doing this by hand. So let's get that flour in there. Make sure your liquids and your flour are completely integrated. So at this point, we're not doing any kneading yet. We're just making sure that all our flour is completely saturated with that liquid. And because we're using freshly milled flour, the next step here is we're going to let this sit anywhere between 15 minutes and 1 hour so that flour completely absorbs the liquid. So that looks good. So we are going to cover it and just let it sit. And once the liquid is completely incorporated and that flour has absorbed the liquid, we'll be back for the next step. Okay, so I'm back a little sooner than I expected because we almost skipped a step. So we need to get the sourdough in there. And let's see, I don't know if you can see that. It's really active, which is good. So I need about 1/2 cup of the sourdough starter, or about 115 grams. So let's go ahead and weigh that. Oops, did not intend to do that. All right, let's tare that so it's at 0. And I'm going to use a glass bowl, and hopefully that's big enough because I don't want to be putting the sourdough in the stainless steel pan. All right, let's go ahead and measure that. I need about 115. Here we go. It's 114. And that should get us there. 115. Let's get that mixed in. Let's put that aside. All right, I think that'll work. I think it's time to use my hands. And at this point, your dough is going to be really, really wet. But once we let it sit for that 15 minutes to an hour, it should be much better. This is the point at which a mixer would be handy. If you have one, need a stool to get in there. Much better. And as you can see, it didn't take much to get all that sourdough mixed in there. All right, so we're going to let that sit. And we'll be back. Okay, so our dough has been sitting for about 20 minutes. And it's time for us to do some kneading. And as you can see, it's still a little bit sticky. And so what I want to do is I'm going to knead the dough until I can stretch, pull and stretch without it breaking right away. You want to make sure that when you try to stretch, it wants to come back together and not break right away. All right, I'm going to get my little stool so I have some height to get this done. All right, there we go. And at this point, you want to resist that urge to add flour. I think I'm going to take this out of the bowl and just knead right here. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. And depending on how soft your dough is, this could take about 10 or 15 minutes. And as you can see, I'm getting some sticking. So one of the indicators is going to be that the sticking reduces as the dough gets to the point where it wants to stay together. Then if your hand gets tired, you can pause for a few minutes and come back. And actually what I haven't tried is just seeing whether if I do just some stretch and folds, if that would help. Like I said, I'm experimenting. This is the first time I'm doing this. If you have a mixer, then this makes the job that much easier. And actually what I'm going to do, the way that dough feels, I'm going to put it back in here. And I'm just going to go with stretch and folds for now. And I'm going to do this like every 30 minutes. And the mistake I've made is I should have wet my hands, so let me go ahead and do that. And this is part of the beauty of experimenting. G, come on, and letting you see how things are going. Need to get some water. Because I could easily just experiment and get this perfected. But I think it is more useful to you if you see the pitfalls of what we are doing, then we can all learn together. I'm getting my turned back on. So that's 2. All right, and we're going to do about 4 or 5 stretch and fold each time. So I'm going to assume this is going to take us about 2 hours, because that's about how long it takes when you do stretch and folds for just regular sourdough bread. So we have done 1 stretch and fold. We're going to let this sit for 30 minutes. and we'll come back and do another stretch and fold. So we will see you back in about 30 minutes. All right, so while we are waiting for our first 30 minutes, I thought I would pop on here and explain what I'm doing. So over about maybe the last month, I've been doing a lot of experimenting, and especially with the plants in the backyard. And I noticed that when I have all those failures when I'm experimenting, I don't want to pick up the camera and do any recording. And it occurred to me that if I am failing and learning something new, this could be something that is beneficial to the next person that is also a beginner. So I have decided I'm going to record my failures as well as my successes. So I'm going to say about 6 months ago, I started making some dill bread. And it started off really nice and pretty. Everything was looking good. And then I put it in the oven on a warm setting so it would rise. And I got distracted and I walked away from it. And by the time I came back, the bread had completely dried on the outside. And I thought, well, okay, I've destroyed that. And I did not finish that video. But that dill bread turned out to be some of the best dill bread we have ever had. So I kind of felt like that today, and I thought, well, maybe I should experiment with this bread dough until it's at a point where when I do the video, it is all perfect. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go through and see how this bread turns out, and we're going to see whether it fails or it works out. And we're going to see that together. So that's going to be my goal over the next few months. I also had some failures when I was experimenting. I started a video and I put some plants outside, and I believe it was cauliflower. And it was nice and pretty while it was in the shelf in here. And I thought, well, there isn't going to be snow or freezing for about a week or two. And as soon as I put them out, we had a freeze that night and they all died. And then I did the same thing with some tomatoes. Around this time, I normally put out a tomato or two into the greenhouse just to see what is going to happen. I've done that twice now and they have both died. And then so I repeated the experiment about a week ago, and I think those ones are going to be fine. But I think that video would have been more beneficial if I included those failures. So going forward, that is going to be my goal. And that's another reason why when I started today and the kitchen was not cleaned up, I decided I was going to show the kitchen exactly as it is. We're going to clean up before we start making our bread. So look out for videos going forward where some of them might be a success, some of them might be a failure, but that's what we're going to be doing. So we will see you shortly when we are ready for the second stretch and fold. We'll see you shortly. All right, so it's been 30 minutes. We have our water and we are ready for the next stretch and fold day. And as you can see, it has risen a little bit and it's still a little bit sticky, so it's still as we expect. So what you want to do is dip your fingers in the water. I'm going to lift the dough, we're going to stretch and fold. And if your hands are still wet, you don't need any more water. Stretch and fold. Stretch and fold. And see, the fingers have started kind of sticking. It's time to put your hand in the water again. Stretch and fold. And I'm going to do one more just to bring everything together. We're going to cover it and we're going to let this sit for another 30 minutes. And we're going to do one more stretch and fold. And at that point will be, because it was 30 minutes, we'll let it sit for another 30. And then we'll do a stretch and fold. And then we'll let it finish the rising. Well, not the rising. Then we'll let it sit until we get to a total of the 2 hours. And then we'll be ready for the next step. All right, it has been 30 minutes. And as you can see, the dough has risen again. And it's time for our final stretch and fold. So make sure you have wet fingers. All right, so stretch and fold. There we go. Right, so now you can kind of see the approximate size, and we're going to let this rise, and it's going to be approximately anywhere between an hour or two, depending on how warm it is. And I'll put it in the oven and turn on the light so it doesn't take too long, because my day is almost gone and I want us to finish making that loaf. So I am going to cover it and we're going to keep an eye on it, and we want it to double in size, and we do not want to overproof it. So I'm going to keep an eye, and if it starts bubbling, if you start seeing those little bubbles, it's probably time for us to do the next step. So we will see you shortly. While we're waiting on that dough to rise, we're going to feed the sourdough. And normally what I do is equal parts flour to equal parts water. So I'm putting in 1.5 teaspoons. And this is some of that freshly milled flour. So I'm going to put in some room temperature water, and that's 1.5 tablespoons. Then we're going to mix it in. I don't think I'll be using this sourdough here in the next day or two, so that should be enough. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to lower my little elastic band to the level where the sourdough starter is at. And at this point, notice that I'm putting on a lid that doesn't completely close, because I still need air to get in there, but I don't want bugs to get in. So I'm going to keep this out, and I'll feed it again tomorrow, just so I make sure I have almost enough for the next recipe that I want to make. So after we feed it tomorrow, if I decide I'm not going to do that recipe in the next few days, I'll just put it in the fridge. I should mention that when I mill the flour, I am making sure that if I mill more than I need, I'm not leaving it out in the open. I'm putting it in the fridge just so it lasts me a little longer. Otherwise it goes bad really fast because it's freshly milled. So it's been about 30 minutes, and I thought I would show you where the dough is at. It is not quite ready yet. So I'm going to put it back in the oven for a little longer, maybe another 30 minutes, and then we'll look at it and see where we are at. Oh, and I have the light on in the oven. So it's been 1 hour. That's where we are at. So we're not quite there yet. So I'm going to put it back in for another 30 minutes and put it back in the oven. But it looks like we are very close. So it's been about an hour and a half. And that's what it currently looks like. And it's almost double. So I'm going to let it sit for another 30 minutes. So that's going to be a total of about 2 hours. And at that point, it should be ready. So we'll be right back. It's been another 30 minutes. And I don't know if you can see that, but right there, I started making bubbles. So the dough is ready for us to work with it. But it's 9:30 in the evening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it into a ball one more time. Let me wash my hands. I'm going to fold it. Let's do a test here. See that? It stretches quite a bit before it starts tearing. So that's good. But because we're not going to make that loaf tonight, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to flip the dough so it's a nice ball. And I'm going to put a little bit of oil. I'm going to make sure it covers the dough. I'll add a little bit more. There, I'm going to wash my hands and dampen the cloth one more time. Actually, what I'm going to do, instead of using that damp cloth, I'm going to use some plastic wrap. We're going to put it on there nice and tight. And we're going to put it in the refrigerator. And we'll shape the bread in the morning. So it's going to continue to rise, but it's going to be really slow, so we don't overproof the dough. And we will see you in the morning. So it's the next morning, and we are ready to shape the loaf. And that's what the dough looks like. And I'm going to be using a 9x5 and an 8. I believe this is like an 8x4, and I'll be using this as well. Need some water to wet my fingers so we can get the loaf out. We're going to make 2 loaves. And you can see the bubbles. And we know we did not. Oh, there we go. Busted 2 of them. So one of the loaves is going to be slightly bigger than the other. And we know we did not overproof the dough because we don't have an excessive amount of bubbles. It's nice and soft. So what we are going to do now is shape this into a rectangle. And we're going to fold this to a rectangle like that. And that way. And we're going to fold and pull. And then take the end and we'll fold it in on itself like that. And do the same on the other side. That's the first loaf. Let's get the second one ready. And then we're going to do the same thing. Stretch and fold. And fold it onto itself. And do the same thing to the other side. We're going to lightly grease the pan. Get my cloth ready, so we can just use this. We'll cover that lightly, and we'll let them rise. It's kind of warm, so it's probably going to be an hour or maybe an hour and a half, and we want them to double in size, and then we'll bake them. So we'll be back when they're ready. It's been 2 hours and the bread has risen quite a bit, not as much as I would like it to, so I'm going to give it another hour, and then it should probably be ready by then. And as you can see, it's risen quite a bit. But we have about maybe an inch before it gets to the top. I'll give it another hour. Actually, it might be ready to put in the oven. So I'm going to get the oven going. That should take about 30 minutes to get to temperature, and then I'm going to let it stay on for about an extra 15 minutes before I put in the bread, and we will see you then. Alright, so our loaves are ready, and I'm debating whether I should put some egg wash. So I'm getting the oven ready. I think I'll do the egg wash, and I'll just do that lightly. Let's get a bowl. Okay, so we're going to do 1 egg and about 3 tablespoons of water. So there's the egg. So I do rinse out my eggshells, and I put them in a pan, and I normally dry them out. You can see how pretty those are. They're nice and green. These are eggs from Organics. So anyway, I dry them out at about 200 degrees for about an hour and a half. And I grind them into a powder, and I use them in my garden. So there's the egg. I need to add the water, 2 tablespoons of water, or 3. Where's my little scoop? Okay, I'm going to do 3. Get my brush. Just lightly brush them. I feel like so far this experiment has gone better than I was expecting. So we should find out here shortly how we did. I should also mention that I roughly followed a recipe from, I believe they're called Grains in Small Places, but she used a Bosch to get all her dough mixed, and because I was hand mixing, I didn't follow the recipe exactly. My oven still has about another 10 minutes, so what I'm going to do is put this close to the oven, so when we're ready, I'll just get them in. And when we're ready for the next step, well, the next step is seeing how well they've done. We'll probably check them in the oven about 20-30 minutes in, just to see make sure that they're rising like they should. Then we'll go from there. So we'll see you shortly. So we have the oven set to 395, and I'm ready to get the loaves in there. See if we can get this done one-handed. Yeah. There we go. You can see better. Ooh, that one's heavy. All right, and we'll check the progress here in about 20 minutes to see how well they're rising. Set the timer. It's 20 minutes. Actually, I'm going to do, yeah, let's start off with 20 minutes. All right. It's been about 20 minutes. That's what they're looking like. That's good. So I'm going to turn down the oven. I'm also making dinner. So I think we'll turn the oven down to about 375 and cook the loaves for another 30 minutes or 25 minutes. I need to take the temperature of the loaves. It's getting really brown. Just give that a few seconds. Okay, that's at 100 and, well, that's close to 200. And that is dry. So I'm going to assume that we are good. And I'll put it down for a minute and take those out. So that's what they look like. And I'll give it about 2 or 3 minutes before I try to take them out of there because that's really hot. They didn't rise as much as I wanted them to, but that's okay because this is our first try. So we'll get them out of the pans and we'll let them cool off and then we'll slice into one of them. All right, so I'm going to have Roger cut into the loaf. We need a cutting board. Go ahead. They did not rise as I had expected. Let's see what they look like. Oh, wow.
Very cinnamony. Cinnamon red.
What a surprise. Look at how good that looks. Oh, and it's nice and springy. That's a surprise.
Dry.
Yes, it is dry, honey.
No.
Right, so he feels like it's drier than it should be. So that's something that we'll need to work on. So I want to lift it without making a mess here. So it is quite soft. And it has the consistency that I was looking for. It's not too dense, so when I do the next round, I know the things that I should be working on. And yeah, once we put it in the oven, it really did not rise. And soft, sweet. So in about a week, we'll try this again. And that's it for today. Bye.